Thank you, Acting Chairman Hart, members of the board. On July 6, 2013, at 11:28 local time, a Boeing 777 operated by Asiana Airlines as Flight 214 struck the seawall short of runway 28 left at San Francisco International Airport. The airplane was destroyed by impact forces and fire. 3 of the 291 passengers were fatally injured. 49 occupants received serious injuries. The flight was a scheduled passenger flight from Seoul, Korea, operated under the provisions of 14 CFR Part 129. A full GO team was launched from Washington with support of regional investigators from the Western Pacific region. The team was on scene until July 18th. An investigative hearing was held on December 12, 2013. The airplane entered the San Francisco terminal area at approximately 11:19 local time via a standard arrival route. The weather was clear with light winds from the south-southwest. The flight was vectored to a 14-mile straight-in final for runway 28 left. The glide slope portion of the instrument landing system was out of service, and the pilots were aware. Right seat was an instructor pilot, newly certified as an instructor, with a total time of about 12,000 hours and approximately 3,200 hours in the 777. The relief first officer was seated in the jump seat and acted as an observer during the approach. To help understand the sequence of events, here is a view of the left side of a 777 panel. The pilot's primary flight display, or PFD, is on the lower left of the screen and zoomed in above right. The top of the PFD contains the Flight Mode Annunciator, or FMA, area, which shows the current autothrottle, roll, and pitch modes. Airspeed is displayed on the vertical tape on the left side of the PFD, and altitude and vertical speed on the right side. The Mode Control Panel, or MCP, where the pilot makes entries to the autoflight system, is on the glare shield circled in yellow. Entries to select desired airspeed, altitude, vertical speed, and heading are made on this panel. It also includes switches to select various Autopilot Flight Director System, or AFDS, modes. Autopilot and autothrottle disconnect switches are also located on the control yoke and throttles, respectively. Please note these graphics are for demonstration and do not necessarily reflect the exact status of the accident airplane. We will present an animation which will depict the flight path of the airplane on its approach to the airport, along with selected instrument readings and control settings. The animation includes a clip of airport surveillance video, and due to the potentially disturbing nature of the video, attendees may exit the room if they choose. Please note this animation is not an exact replica of a 777 cockpit. The primary flight display in FMA is shown in the lower left, with pilot entries to select desired airspeed, altitude, and vertical speed, shown by the magenta text, and current autothrottle roll. In the upper window, you'll see a chase plane view of the airplane, along with selected cockpit voice recorder text. As the airplane nears the runway, a graphic of the pilot's view of the Precision Approach Path Indicator, or PAPI, lights will appear. The upper right window shows the airplane in profile view relative to the desired glide path to the runway. The green line shows a nominal 3-degree angle to the touchdown zone, and the white and red lines show 1/2 degree above and below. Note this is not a display directly visible to the pilot, but is a combination of various cues and references for purposes of this animation. The ribbon in the center of the screen displays current airspeed, altitude, and the local time. The lower right display area shows the control yoke, thrust lever position, and flaps, and at appropriate times will show low airspeed alerts. In this still image, the autopilot is on, the airplane had been vectored to a 14-mile-long final approach, and through a sequence of speed and configuration changes, the flight had diverged well above the glide path and was descending too slowly. As the animation begins, the landing gear was extended, and the pilot monitoring remarked that they were a little high. The pilot flying said he would descend more and selected 1,500 feet per minute descent rate in the autopilot. As you can see in the profile view, this did begin to bring the airplane back toward the desired glide path. However, about 6 miles from the runway, the selected descent rate was set back to 1,000 feet per minute. The airplane was still well above the desired glide path. The selected altitude was changed to 3,000 feet to prepare the autopilot in case a go-around was needed. The airplane passed the 5-mile point, near the final approach fix, about 400 feet higher than desired, and the crew began slowing the airplane. The pilot flying called for flaps 30, but the pilot monitoring noted they were still a little too fast for flaps 30. The pilot flying switched the autopilot to flight level change mode, which did not help with the descent and resulted in the airplane initiating a climb to the 3,000-foot altitude that was previously set. To prevent the climb, the pilot disconnected the autopilot and retarded the thrust levers to idle, and this resulted in the autothrottle transitioning to hold mode. In hold mode, the autothrottle does not control airspeed. Descent rate increased to about 1,500 feet per minute, and the observer pilot noted sink rate. About 1.4 miles from the runway, the airplane descended through the desired glide path and slowed through the target approach speed. The pitch attitude steadily increased as the pilot pulled back on the column in an effort to maintain the glide path. The airplane was well below the glide path, as indicated by the 4 red PAPI lights, and airspeed was 15 knots below the desired approach speed and rapidly dropping. 11 seconds before impact, an audible alert sounded, indicating the airspeed was too low. 4 seconds later, the pilot monitoring advanced the thrust levers, followed by stick shaker activation and a verbal call to go around. These actions were too late, and the main gear and the underside of the aft fuselage struck the seawall. The tail of the airplane broke off at the aft pressure bulkhead. The airplane slid along the runway before the fuselage rose to an approximate 30-degree nose-down angle and pivoted about 330 degrees before coming to the rest off the left side of the runway. Flight attendants initiated the evacuation a short time later after seeing flames outside a cabin window. Passengers began evacuating about 90 seconds after the airplane stopped. 2 slide rafts inflated within the cabin during the impact sequence, temporarily trapping and injuring 2 flight attendants. 2 passengers and 4 flight attendants were ejected from the aircraft during the impact sequence. A fire initiated within the right engine, which had come to rest adjacent to the right side of the fuselage. After the accident, 2 airport fire vehicles were maneuvering and rolled over the ejected passenger who was lying in front of the left wing. Mr. Fedek will have further details on passenger restraint, evacuation, injuries, and emergency response in his presentation. Safety issues identified in this investigation include flight path management, adherence to standard operating procedures, flight crew monitoring, flight instructor operating experience proficiency, manual flight proficiency, understanding of autothrottle system logic, Boeing 777 auto flight system airspeed control, appropriate use of flight directors, low energy alerting systems, injury potential from lateral forces, slide raft certification standards, ARFF training and staffing, and San Francisco Airport emergency procedures. Staff has proposed recommendations in these areas. Former Chairman Deborah Hersman launched with the team, and I would like to acknowledge the NTSB staff who participated in this investigation. The investigation included party members from the FAA, Boeing, Pratt & Whitney, Honeywell, San Francisco Fire Department, and Air Cruisers Company. The Korean Aviation and Railway Accident Investigation Board appointed an accredited representative, and advisors from Asiana Airlines and the Korean Office of Civil Aviation. This concludes my opening presentation, and we will proceed to Captain Cox's operational factors presentation.